Warning: the following video is based off a widely popular creepypasta. If that's not your thing, I suggest you leave. If you claim that this video ruined your childhood, or if this scares you, or keeps you up at night, just remember, you're the ones who requested this. The infant children in the Rugrats were really just figments of Angelica's imagination. Imaginary friends, if you will. Chucky died shortly after being born, as well as his mother. This is why Chaz is such a nervous wreck. On a trip to Paris, Chaz would eventually marry a hooker named Kira, who had a daughter named Kimmy. Kimmy was torn away from her mother due to a cocaine addiction. Chaz denied that Kira was ever a prostitute. While Kira would struggle with her addictions throughout her entire life, she was eventually able to get her green card and lead a relatively happy life with Chaz. As for Kimmy, Angelica was able to form her delusion of the child based off stories that Kira would tell. Tommy was a stillborn. That's why his father Stu was constantly in the basement making toys. It's his way of coping with and mourning the loss of his son, who never had the chance to live. The DeVilles chose to have an abortion. Angelica could never figure out whether or not they would have had a boy or a girl, thus causing the creation of the twins. As for all grown up, Angelica was a bipolar schizophrenic who, as a teenager, began to experiment and eventually become addicted to various narcotics. Her favorite of which being acid. Angelica would constantly be taking hits of acid, which brought her back to her childhood, and to her childhood creations, which she began to obsess over. In her mind, the children grew up with her, so she would never have to live alone in this cold, judgmental world. Angelica's real mother died of a heroin overdose very early in Angelica's life. Angelica was a crack baby, which is why she developed her mental disorders. Drew, Angelica's father, would end up marrying a gold-digging whore in order to try and return some level of normalcy to his life and to his daughter's life. Angelica found herself idolizing Charlotte, her new stepmother, and modeled herself after her stepmother. Loud, abrasive, rude. While Angelica was eventually able to convince herself that Charlotte was her real mother, she always had some concept of what her mother was truly like, and needed a surrogate for her to live through. That surrogate came in the form of a Barbie-like doll named Cynthia. Angelica would alter the doll's appearance, making its orange dress filthy and jacking up the doll's hair, to make it resemble her mother as she remembered her, and she would become desperately attached to this doll. While most of the children in the show were little more than figments of Angelica's imagination, there were two children who were very, very real. The first of the two was Tommy's little brother Dill. However, Angelica could never tell the difference between her creations and the baby Dill. As a result of that, she was always confused whenever Dill wouldn't follow her commands. One day, after an hour of endless crying and a refusal to disappear like the others when Angelica was angry, Angelica hit Dill. And she hit him, and she hit him, screaming and screeching for Dill to just go away. After a few minutes of this, Stu ran in and ripped his niece off his only child, but the damage had already been done. Dill had a brain hemorrhage, which resulted in Dill becoming quite mentally challenged as he grew older. By the time of the events of All Grown Up, Dill would live as an outcast, constantly ridiculed for how strange he was, and for his mental retardation. The immense guilt is what caused Angelica to forget about her imaginary friends, and it would become what led her to begin experimenting with drugs. The other child was Susie, who was Angelica's only friend. Susie, unlike anyone else, actually entertained the idea of Angelica's creations. Because of Angelica's addiction and hallucinations, Angelica was outcasted from society, which led to a complete and total break from reality. While Susie did what she could to help her friend, she could only help so much. Angelica would finally die at the age of 13, finally overdosing in the back of her school's cafeteria, spending the final moments of her life toying with the lives of her creations. Susie would go on to become a psychologist, and after 10 years of work in the field, she would go on to create the show known as Rugrats, as a tribute to her friend's mental disorders and addictions.